the consolation of memory. The 9th chapter of your book, Anita, discusses things that we can do to remember loved ones as time passes. So what are some of the ways that Jews and Jewish adjacent family members can honor the memories of their loved ones over time?
Well, I think it changes over time. In that first year, when loss is still very raw, you can be lighting, if you light Shabbat candles, it's a time to think about the loved one, which is also a way of letting yourself off the hook of feeling guilty for having forgotten that your father died only 2 months ago. It's a way of going back to it and remembering it, if you're not going to synagogue and saying Kaddish in particular, or saying Kaddish once a week in your own way, or keeping a journal of memories about that person. So they can be either Jewish rituals or they can be personal kinds of rituals. There are the holidays in which there is a Yizkor service, at which point mourners will come together for a special service of memory and remembering and saying Kaddish together as a community. I just wanted to say that it was the anniversary of my dad's death recently, and I light a candle generally and put it by his picture, and I make a contribution to Amnesty International in his memory, because that was an organization that he supported and that he cared a lot about. So it is his membership that I continue, and that's a way that I honor his memory and what he gave me also in terms of my values in life. And so it's very private, it's personal, nobody knows that I'm doing that, but it's the time of year that really hits me the most, that I miss him, that I lost him, and that I'm grateful for his memory. And, you know, for a lot of people, giving a gift of charity to something that was really important to your loved one is a way of doing that. Visiting a cemetery is also a way of doing that, which is sometimes tradition. Some people do it around the high holidays. Some people do it on the anniversary of a death or of a birthday. And all of these things it's not morbid at all, really. It's a way of touching grief, of remembering that the person that you lost is still with you in some ways, and signifying that in the world. So that's another blessing of Jewish tradition in this one. And the further away you get from someone's death, my dad died a long time ago now, but it's still, I always know that in August this is going to happen. And especially for the first few years, I remember getting very emotional in July and August, and it finally occurred to me why. And then I made the contribution, and it was like closing a circle, as you said earlier. So that's a very personal way of doing it myself.
Thank you. I as a new Jew or newish Jewish, I don't think I appreciated all of these ways of remembering until I read your book. I didn't realize that they were all related to each other, and that they're all ways of, the phrase that's used, I think, in the Yizkor prayer is to bind souls in the bonds of life. And I found that very, very powerful and meaningful, and it's helping me through my year with my mom gone, because we're like at about the 6-month mark now. So thank you for that. It was very helpful to understand that there's so many things that you can do that are very Jewish and really do help you connect to the person who's gone. So
I also want to say that a lot of synagogues and a lot of rabbis run bereavement groups for people who have recently lost a loved one, and sometimes around the holidays as well when you're remembering. So the community also offers ways to heal and to remember, and because it can be sometimes really brutal, especially for an unexpected or a death that just breaks the rules, which we're living through a lot right now as well.
One of the first ways of remembering actually is the unveiling ceremony. And so Rabbi Robyn, can you talk a little bit about unveiling and how do family members or loved ones who aren't Jewish, how can they participate in the ceremony at the cemetery?
Yeah, I just want to mention Anita has actually a wonderful section on unveilings in the book, which I recommend the book and that section highly. I actually officiated an unveiling yesterday, and there's no need for a rabbi to officiate an unveiling. Really, anyone can. And in the book, there's a small service, or you can find things online or ask your synagogue if you belong to one. An unveiling is very much not another funeral. It's an opportunity to come back. Ironically, in Israel, it's typically done in 30 days. In America, we wait for a year or some period of time when the relatives can be there. And you come back to the grave of your loved one, and you recite a few basic prayers. The El Malei Rachamim, the Jewish memorial prayer, the Kaddish, often the 23rd Psalm, maybe a couple of other Psalms. And I like to invite, I know many people do, just invite if anyone has a very brief memory. Again, no pressure. But I officiated unveiling yesterday. The wife of 30 some years herself is a very devout Catholic, who was the one who convinced the gentleman whose unveiling it was to get involved at my synagogue and become president, because she said, you got to do something in your Jewish community and get involved and step up. And so we always would credit her, rightfully, that he became president because of his Catholic wife. And it was very important to her and the family that he have an unveiling. So I recited the Jewish prayers, which is absolutely what they expected and wanted. Anything that was in Hebrew, I did in English. And they shared a few memories, and it was lovely. It's a very brief, simple experience, but it's often, not always, but often the family's first time at the gravestone of a loved one, and very emotional. And it, I don't know about the word closure. I hate the word closure because I don't think there's such thing as closure, but it brings an end to a certain period of time, let's say, of mourning. And I think regardless of your religion, it can be very powerful. You also, the reason it's called an unveiling, usually there's like a piece of cheesecloth that you take off of the monument itself. And often people will leave stones, as is traditional when you visit a Jewish grave, just to show that you've been there. But I find in my experience, unveilings are just as powerful for relatives of different traditions than they are for people who are Jewish, that they're a really powerful experience, because they kind of give you a way to be okay with the fact that here we are a year later and I'm not okay. And they acknowledge that, and you can feel like that's acceptable and that's normal, and the fact that I'm still mourning is the most normal thing on earth.
I wonder, Rabbi, if in a year from now, if things are back to normal, if unveilings are going to have a different kind of weight and meaning for people who were not able to attend the funeral, or, and wanted to be there. So this, you don't want it to be another funeral, but by the same token, it will give people an opportunity, I hope, to be present, to be physically present.
To make a horrible coronavirus analogy, I know so many couples who are doing small weddings now who want to do large ones with everyone present a year later. So in some ways, it's similar that people had to do. We've been forced to do small funerals, and maybe the unveiling will take on that role where everyone can be together.